Hello, guys, and welcome to the Stardom Cast Extra, right here on patreon.com/the Stardom Cast. I'm your host, Rob Goodwin. I'm joined, of course, by Matt Turner, and perhaps the ratings goddess when it comes to the Stardom Cast. Her episodes are among the top played on the Stardom Cast. It's only post-wrestling Karen Peterson. Karen, it is an absolute pleasure to have you again. How are you?
Like I was saying off air, it feels like it hasn't been however many months since I've last been here, and I've missed you guys.
Oh, we've missed you too.
Guys.
We missed you, Karen. Now, Karen, hold on. I want to see if I say this right. Konnichiwa. Did I get that right?
Konnichiwa. Yes.
Okay, so I had me and Karen were emailing back and forth last week, and I had made mention that there's a pretty good possibility of me going to Japan next year for All-Star Grand Queendom.
Yes, you've said
2 Electric Boogaloo with double sprinkles and cherries on top. I said, well, I have
you're gonna make that on a poster, then go stand outside where the actual Stardom poster is.
Yeah.
Like, here's the full title.
I'll get thrown in jail. How was Japan? Great. But,
hey, if you don't actually stick it on the poster, it's fine.
Absolutely fine.
I made mention. Now, Karen, you lived in Japan, was it 5-6 years?
5.5 years, yeah. But I've been in
round up,
jobs
6.
since then where I've been either going regularly to Japan for work or it has some connection to Japan, minus my current job.
There you go. So this will run into a funny story and a good way to start off this episode. So I asked her, I said, I'm trying to learn some Japanese. What's the best way to go about it? She sent me some people to follow on social media and some YouTube videos. So I was watching one, and as you usually do, as you're watching YouTube, you follow down the rabbit hole. So I found one that was you can sleep to 7 hours of learning Japanese. And when
Does
you
it
wake
actually
up,
work?
and you will wake up, hold on, and you will wake up and you will learn better Japanese, which is, I believe the theory is called osmosis, which is one of my favorite Ozzy Osbourne albums, by the way. So now before I go into any of this, right? Now and I'm a very light sleeper. So I'm like, if I put this on, like, is it going to keep me up? Like, yeah. So I was reading the comments, and one of the comments was, when I put this on, I had some really, really weird dreams, and when I woke up, I turned into an anime character. I just thought that was hilarious. I said, I'm not sure if I should. I'm a very busy guy. I don't have time to turn into an anime character and then to another human. So
you never know. I mean, there may come a time where you need to heed the call. Like meteors or the new big bad rolls into town. You have to be prepared for these things.
But,
in my head, you were saying this, Matt, and I was like, it's that Friends episode where Chandler has the no smoking tape going on, and it's like, and he wakes up and like, I am a strong, independent woman. I don't need cigarettes. And I just had visions of you waking up and suddenly being completely fluent in Japanese.
That might happen. Who knows?
Wakes up and he convinces you that he's a magical girl now.
Throwing shining wizards as I'm going into my stores to sell. Like, boom.
But yes, we are here. Gee, it's already been one of those episodes, even before we pressed record. But believe it or not, we actually have a topic. We have our roundtable discussion, and today the topic is rather apropos, really. Giulia. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have a little bit of chit chat about the career of the Dangerous Queen, sort of talk about the ups, the downs, the stuff before Stardom, maybe, all these things. And then we're going to sort of run down our individual top 5 list of Giulia matches, which for me, I was sort of sat at work today thinking about it because, as you can tell, I'm really busy. And it was... I came up with 4 really, really easy, like right off the bat. And then having one to fill that 5th, because then I was like, right, okay, it's that one. And then I think about it for another 2 minutes. I'll be like, oh, no, it's that one. Oh, no, actually, it's that one. And I'll be honest, my top 5 originally didn't have the Hazuki match from the 5-Star Grand Prix. And I was like, I can't not have that match. It was like literally everything I love about Japanese pro wrestling condensed into like a 12-minute brawl. So it might change. I've got it sort of, but it might change. But especially with all the rumors going around that Giulia is not only going to WWE, is imminently expected at the Performance Center. Like, she might be there now. Who knows? But
we're joking, of course, folks. Relax. That's
She's not actually turning up at the Performance. Again, she's not going to be in the crowd at Deadline. It's fine. But yeah, we thought it would be a really good time to sort of look back at the career of someone who has, I mean, for me personally, and before I throw to Karen, because Karen is far more intelligent than me.
No.
She's being modest. But in terms of sort of Giulia coming to Stardom, when I first started watching Stardom, it was the end of 2019, start of 2020, which you could say was a great time to start watching Stardom, and also the worst time to start watching Stardom because then the pandemic hit. But I personally was not a fan of Giulia at all. I found her to be rather overpushed, and therefore sort of wrestling fans tend to have this thing where if someone is being overpushed, the fandom will dig their heels in and refuse to accept it. And that's where I got to with Giulia. And it wasn't really, and I believe I was saying this to you, Matt, actually, it wasn't until the tail end of her white belt run, just before the Starlight Kid match, that I was really like, okay, yeah, I can see something clicked for me. And since then, she's just gone in my estimations. And now we talked about it last week, Matt, on the free podcast about how she is, you know, Stardom is a ridiculously talented roster. Obviously, we talk about it all the time. The 3 that are left that aren't injured now. But Giulia is one of those very rare few who has got that star power, that aura. When she walks into an arena or, you know, a Korakuen Hall or Shinkiba first ring, you can't help but just watch her. Your eyes automatically drawn to her. And that's not something you can teach. That's just something that I feel like you have. And if you look at that Stardom roster, talented wrestlers all the way down. But I would argue there is maybe 3, 4 wrestlers who have, for me, that intangible star power. And Giulia, for me, is one of those people. Karen, when was the first time? Were you a fan of Giulia in Ice Ribbon sort of prior to her Stardom run, or was Stardom sort of your first exposure to her?
Stardom was actually my first exposure to Giulia. And interestingly enough, it, like, you know, through Ring of Honor and their partnership with like Stardom pre-Bushiroad acquisition, you know, I saw the dark match at Madison Square Garden. I met Mayu at a random like Lakeland, Florida BFE in the middle of nowhere venue where she was signing autographs. But for Giulia, it was she came in at the tail end of 2019, and even then, I really wasn't regularly watching Stardom at that point. I had just decided that I was going to go with my parents. Long story short, I don't know if you can see it over my left shoulder, but there is a Rob Schamberger frame back there that has the Kabuki Warriors on it. That's the original.
Nice.
And when Rob was painting it, he had me do the narration for the video about the history of the Kabuki, like how Kabuki Mono, like, you know, characters who were designed like Unagi Sayaka and the Kabuki Warriors here, how it's different from the, you know, high performance art of Kabuki. But at that time, my parents really didn't understand the wrestling thing. They hadn't understood it for a very long time.
I got that.
We had brunch and we were sitting at brunch, and I remember playing the video because it went live while I was at brunch with my parents. And I kept telling them, like, I just need to get back to Japan. And my mom looked across the table at me and said, I finally understand it. I finally get it. So for Christmas that year, they gave me a round trip plane ticket to Japan. So I went to Japan, went to Wrestle Kingdom,
incredible.
Went to my first Stardom show. And one of the only checkies I managed to get that night, I didn't know how checky culture worked. I didn't know that you had to bring a lot of cash. I didn't bring cash with me, but a very nice Jungle Kyona fan gave me one of his extra checkies, and I got to take a picture with Giulia and Hana and Jungle Kyona all on the same night. So
that's impressive.
And that was when Giulia first came in. It was right around the time in 2019 when she and Hana were having that. It was right after their knockdown drag out match about being the only climax, quote unquote half foreign, half Japanese wrestler in Stardom. They both wanted to be number one. It was also what was probably this showcased rivalry in Terrace House at the time, around the time before Hana passed. So when I met Giulia the first time, I was like, of course I had the preconceived notions about like, all the scandal around the time about the way she departed from Ice Ribbon. I never watched Ice Ribbon up until that point. And even now I don't have the subscription to their service. So it's like whatever matches I can find, on the rogue internet that happens upon my desk. I watch if I come across it on the Billy. Yes.
VK.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where I didn't understand the hype until I stood next to her and took a picture. Because she was very calm, very collected, very polite. But she had that aura, that it factor. Even then, she had just come into Stardom. She still had her short blonde bob. She didn't have her fancy new Stardom threads. But I stood there and I was like, she's gonna be someone. She's definitely gonna be someone. Especially seeing as they were Stardom at that point, and at least for me, was still recovering from the loss of both Kairi and Io. Even though it's been like over a year and a half later, like they were building talent, and of course Mayu is like forever there. But like I knew with the the way she came in, the way she got thrown into that program with Hana, and how the spotlight was immediately turned onto her, that they had plans for her.
Yeah. And
then no sooner did the new year roll around, she's in a Wrestle Kingdom dark match, like literally after being in the company for like 2 months, 3 months. So it was like they definitely have plans for her, and then her star just took off after that.
Yeah. And to be fair, you look at the I don't want to use the word bumped, but that didn't make that Wrestle Kingdom dark match, which was a huge deal to happen for Stardom to appear at the Tokyo Dome, even if the match wasn't televised. And Giulia, who's just come in, Momo Watanabe, who was, a stalwart at 19 or 20 or whatever she was then, she wasn't there. Which was a huge thing. It was Mayu and Arisa versus Hana and Giulia, wasn't it? I think. Yes. I was like, I can't remember who Mayu's partner was. So there's quite a lot of talent that wasn't on that card, and Giulia being put into that and being used as one of the 4 showcase sort of pillars of Stardom going into 2020 was huge. Matt, were you always on the Giulia train, or were you did you understand the hype? I don't actually know. I think I do actually, but I can't remember fully. Like your Stardom journey, like how much was Giulia a part of that, and how much did you sort of earmark her as sort of going on to great things, or did you think it was just another pet project?
The first time I saw Giulia, Rob, was about a month or 2 ago. No, I'm just.
She won this thing called the 5-star last year. Don't even have you heard of it?
Little shindig they have every October.
Yeah, it tends to be all right if you like wrestling.
If you like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
if you enjoy good wrestling. No, I think I told this story on this podcast before, but obviously, I'll tell it again. Back like 2016 to 18, a lot of the independents that I was working, you would hear in the locker room about this promotion called Stardom and Io, Kairi, and Mayu. Like, you need to see their matches. I need to see their matches. And I'm a very addictive personality. Like, I'm like, if I start watching this Stardom, I'm going to fall down the rabbit hole and I'm going to be addicted. And I already have like Ring of Honor, WWE, Noah, New Japan, All Japan, Dragon Gate. I'm like, I do not have time for another promotion. I'm like, I know if I watch one of these matches, because everybody's talking about it, I'm going to just get crazy addicted to Stardom. Well, fast forward, here we are. But anyhow, so then you go to 2019, 2020. The other 2 names that were constantly popping up in all these independents that I was working was Momo Watanabe and Giulia. And Giulia was like the shiny new thing. Like, then like, no, Giulia, this is. So then I think I like watched an entrance or something, like a clip thing on YouTube, and I was like, okay, that's somebody. Definitely, you can tell just instantly, just by the entrance or just the way she carries her, she has that it factor. And then once I started watching Stardom in the beginning of 2021, she was pretty much kind of on her way. I believe she was at that point. She was the Wonder of Stardom champion. Or no, she just she just lost it, I think, to Tam at the show at Budokan. So that was really kind of my first foray with her. She was already where she was, and then just doing some, back, doing my research and listening to the Stardom Cast podcast before I was involved in it. I would always hear Rob and Chris saying she was somebody that was really pushed down people's throats from the moment she got there, because Rossi and the booking committee really believed in Giulia and were just going to keep pushing, almost to the point where it almost 180'd on them. And then it seemed like it was that match with Hana Kimura at the 2019 year-end climax. So they had a just crazy, insane brawl. It was like 15 minutes of just like go out there and just like, yep, try, go out there and make it as violent and as fun as possible. And Cork and Hall is kind of the quote unquote, home base for Stardom. And that crowd was so hot. And it really seemed like that they turned. Hana was, at that point she came off winning the 5-star, was so close to beating B for the World of Stardom Championship. So she was already a main eventer, and for Giulia to be able to hang there with Hana. Not only that, but go back and watch that match. Hana gave Giulia a lot in that match. And credit to Giulia. Here we are some almost 4 years later, and Giulia pays tribute to Hana all the time. Doing the Tiger Lily, doing the even Dream Queendom, the first one, with the match with Konami, as we call that, the unofficial tribute match to Hana. She's always paying tribute to Hana. So even, in Hana's passing, with Hana looking down, Giulia is still paying tribute and basically saying, hey, thank you, because you were really the one. That match really was the one that really got the wheels in motion. You fast forward, 3-4 months later, Giulia winds up winning the Cinderella tournament. She was supposed to wrestle Arisa for the Wonder of Stardom Championship, and that's a match that we talk about all the time. We actually did a what if episode on that, a few months ago. So check that out if you haven't. On the Patreon feed, cheap plug. But then obviously she had a really great run with the Wonder of Stardom Championship. She did phenomenal things and is doing phenomenal things with the Down Del Mondo faction. And you go to just a couple months ago when she was in Philly at the ECW Arena for Impact Wrestling. She was probably the most over person on that show. For someone that's never wrestled in America before, for someone to get that pop the way she did, and literally having the entire crowd chant her name from curtain to curtain. I always say it's one thing to be good bell to bell, it's another thing to be good curtain to curtain. And I remember when I was leaving that show, I bumped into Deonna Purrazzo and I asked her, I said, you guys are leading to a match, right? Because originally the match was supposed to be Giulia versus Deonna. That's the way that they were kind of going. But I don't think Impact wanted Deonna to eat an L, so that's why they made it a 4-way with Giselle Shaw and Momo Kogo. And she's like, yeah, we just did a promo backstage. This is going to air. And she's like, well, I tell you what, I have been in the ring and been around some people that have aura. And this is Deonna Purrazzo, one of the greatest women's wrestlers in Impact Wrestling history. And asked someone at the top of her game, she's like, I've never been around anybody that has that aura. Just doing it, and she said, not just in the ring, just doing an interview with her. She's like, she just has so much star power. And she said, I think hopefully somewhere down the line, we're going to have that singles match. So hopefully, depending on where Giulia goes come the summer 2024, we do see that singles match. And there's a lot of dream matches that are out there for Giulia. A lot of them. Obviously, the Utami one was one we thought we were going to get about a month or so ago. But, hey, injuries happen. The Mercedes, that's a match that, dream match that we definitely want to see somewhere down the line. And obviously, if they're doing this cross promotion with Impact, Deonna Purrazzo, Jordan Grace, there's a lot of wrestlers that are lining up to wrestle Giulia because of that, of her phenomenal star power.
Giulia Masha Slamovich would be very good as well. Giulia versus Killer Kelly, I think, would be really good as well.
Yeah. It's something real quick, Rob. I just want to just piggyback and then I'll tag you back in. But I know when we got done doing the when our episode aired on Talk is Jericho, a lot of my friends who don't watch Stardom or really don't watch wrestling that much, they just support me, which I always say, support your friends, folks. Support your friends.
Absolutely.
I never, there it is. I never even realized this until it was about 24 hours or so after the podcast aired, where a lot of my friends were texting me and calling me, and they were like, who's this Giulia? Because Chris was talking a lot about Giulia to the point where it's like, I wonder if he's trying to poach Giulia. And then I went back and listened to the episode. I was like, that was like 20-25% of the episode. He asked us a lot of questions about Giulia, knew who she was, knew certain things, and then it seemed like to try to get some info. So I was like, I didn't even point that out. Again, maybe we're that old saying, we're so far to the forest you can't see the trees. But again, my friends who don't watch Stardom or don't watch wrestling at all was like, who's this Giulia? And they would just go on YouTube and type in Giulia, and they just said, just from the entrance alone, they're like, that's a star. That's a star.
Yeah, it's funny you should bring that up, really, because it's amazing what a change of gear will do. And I think Giulia sort of to use the verb I always use, pokey-evolving, and coming out with the robe and things like that. She immediately became, for lack of a better phrase, a badass. You looked at her and just thought, that is a star. And we saw it as recently as All-Star Grand Queendom, where Mirai and Amisori came out in completely new gear, completely new robes, and everyone was like, oh my god, they look like stars. And there is a certain aura that goes with it. But Giulia, I think, has always had it. She just needed to win the crowd over. And I think that was something she struggled with. I think the Hannah feud really, really helped. I will always say that Hannah Kimura match at Korakuen Urin Climax might not be Giulia's best match, but it is damn near her most important match. Because without Hannah, who, let's face it, is unrivaled in Stardom at being able to conduct a crowd. You watch her matches and she can toe that line. She doesn't toe the line. She jump ropes the line between heel and face so well, and the crowd is just there for her the entire time. And that match with Giulia was a great example of that. And I think that was a good example for Giulia to really engage the crowd in what she's doing. Right, we know you're a good wrestler, so is everyone else on the roster. Show us what you can do to stand out. Okay, it's not enough now to just be good looking and a good wrestler. Show us what you can do to stand out. And now she's embraced that dangerous queen sort of Akira Hokuto sort of mantra, and now she's completely unstoppable. Matt, you mentioned obviously the dream matches that we've still got. I fully see that Mercedes Moné match happening in 2024 because I imagine it will be for the New Japan Women's Strong Open Weight Women's Strong title. The one that
you're gonna post it, Karen.
Yeah. The belt they created when they
had like the New Japan Strong Ramalama Ding Dong.
Exactly. It's like New Japan, and obviously I love New Japan, huge soft spot for New Japan, but it's like New Japan were like, oh, we need a women's belt. And someone says, you've already got a women's belt. It's the IWGP. No, we need a women's belt. You've already got a women. No, we need a women's. And that was how the strong women's title sort of came about.
Rob was in the booking meeting, folks.
Could go on a whole rant. I could go on a whole rant about that, but I'm not getting.
You and me both, sir. You and me both.
God.
There was a bit of it on Post Pro Wrestling, actually, and one of my most recent New Japan reviews.
Was this with WH?
Lots of feelings come up on the 1-year anniversary of the IWGP Women's Championship.
Mayu,
and the strong title.
Yeah, Mayu, 210 days as champion, has defended it twice. And again, that's not Mayu. That's not on Mayu. Mayu's got nothing to do with that, but even so, absolutely bizarre. Karen, you brought up Giulia's sort of debut in Stardom, and it was only in doing a little bit of research for shameless self-plug, the book that I'm writing, that I actually sort of delved into the weeds of how Giulia came from Ice Ribbon to Stardom. And it's such a weird story, really, that sort of you're not surprised, really, that they revisited it in a feud with Suzu Suzuki and then Mayu Kihi as well in 2023, because she did leave on the worst possible terms with Ice Ribbon. Just sort of condensing for those that haven't read about it or don't sort of know the backstory. Basically, Giulia said that she was going to leave Ice Ribbon, and please, Karen, if I get any of this wrong, please jump in and tell me. From what I understand, she told Ice Ribbon that she intended to leave. Ice Ribbon were like, okay, but we want you to work these dates. Giulia basically said, I'm leaving for Stardom on this date. Ice Ribbon said, but you've still got dates to work. And Giulia went, no, I'm leaving on that date. Posted on Twitter that she'd left Ice Ribbon, and then rocked up in Stardom on that day where she did the announcement that she joined Stardom, which blindsided not only Ice Ribbon management, but also her friends in Ice Ribbon, Suzu Suzuki. I believe she missed, was it Tequila Saya's retirement show that, and I think her and Tequila Saya were relatively close. So it was a huge debacle for Giulia to turn up. And I believe, again, this bit is hearsay, but I believe there was quite a lot of sort of attempting to smooth things over after this on the Stardom side of things. So in terms of your debut in a company, it's not ideal to, you know, for lack of a better phrase, and I feel like I can sort of swear on this episode because it's Patreon, you don't want to piss off one and then come to a company where the crowd are sort of like, I thought you were an ice ribbon. What happened? And then they look at what happened and go, yeah, this is a bit backhand. It was all very, very strange, wasn't it, Karen?
I would go with messy. It was a bit messy.
It was.
It was one of those things where, as somebody who worked in Japan in the public and the private sector, your employer, you kind of have, there are certain unspoken rules about loyalty when it comes to whom pays your paycheck, and departing one company and going to another, whether you're moving from the public sector to the private sector, from corporate to corporate, it doesn't matter. You need to do things as smoothly as possible so as not to upset your previous employer, and also not to embarrass your new employer.
And that's key as well.
The miscommunication about how everything was done, there was a bit of backpedaling because there was the I don't know if there's such thing as contract tampering in Japan, but that's kind of what it looked like, that Stardom was possibly recruiting her and, you know, trying to get her to come over, but they weren't. I don't know how they viewed what her remaining dates were and if she was able to break the contract. We also don't know what kind of contract Giulia was under with Ice Ribbon. No. If it was here are your contracted dates, or if it was we're going to let you go with the understanding that you do X, Y, and Z. And then corporate came back with, yeah, about that. We're kind of like under the Bushi Road umbrella now, and we can't really do that. So it was very much her arrival in Stardom was met, at least from what I remember of the video, it was met with mixed reactions, because it was kind of like the girl walks into the room and everybody's talking about her, but it's not necessarily all of the good things about her because of the way everything came down. And then it was people, it's like when you find out people are released on Twitter and they're just like, I haven't even picked up my phone yet. Like it's one of those things where, yeah, because that happens every now and then too.
Neil Dashwood.
Love her, but but that's what it was like. And that's why, the shock of Giulia helped carry Ice Ribbon and bring a lot of attention to Ice Ribbon through her work with Ice Ribbon. But the unceremonious departure, including potentially not telling everyone, including the girl she was sharing a actual room with in the dormitory, i.e. Suzu, it not only ruffled, it was traumatizing for a lot of them, because they're like, why did you abandon us? Why did you? And that was why that when Prominence went freelance and showed up in Stardom, a year and a half or 2 years later, that was the story they ran with, because they leaned into the scandal of her departure, because it's like, oh yeah, Giulia has the world. She's just come so far. But let's not forget, it was not a smooth transition from one company to another. And the fact that they leaned into it and, profit, everyone was like, you know what? We'll bury the hatchet for $1. Why not? So It was just one of those things where I think, as somebody who was also just getting into Stardom at that time, it also I had very mixed emotions about it when I saw all that happen, because I'm just like, as somebody who worked there, I was just like, this is not good. It would be like if Katsuhiko Nakajima left or was planning to leave Noah and then showed up in All Japan, declared he's going to be in a match, and then was like, oh, let me just tweet this. Yeah, guys, I'm done with Noah now. And I'm not like, that was the kind of, going to greener pastures, but not doing things in the correct, expected order. It's probably a little different, in Western countries where pro wrestling isn't so independent. Means you're more, unless you're with the WWE or now AEW or Impact or a country that has a contract, it's pretty much I will work wherever. Just give me health insurance. Like,
yeah,
it's just one of those things where it's like,
it's a low bar, guys.
Like, yeah, get unionized, guys. It's dangerous out there. But that's the thing, is that it's just like it shouldn't have gone down the way it did. But the fact that they were able to turn it around after a while. But yeah, I think Giulia had to do a lot of work, not just proving herself as a wrestler, but proving herself to fans who were just like, you were one of the stars of Ice Ribbon, and you walked away from that, and the way you walked away from that, how can I trust you to be someone in this company that I love? How can I trust you to fill in Kagetsu's shoes because she's retiring, or Io's shoes now that she's gone, or Kairi's? How can we trust you when that was the way you left? So I feel like she was kind of fighting an uphill battle for probably well into 2020.
Yeah,
definitely. A lot of people over.
Yeah, I definitely passed the Cinderella tournament win. I think she was still certainly in a lot of people's debt in that instance, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It was all about loyalty. How can we invest in you when you might well leave again as soon as a better offer comes in? And I do remember there was something very, very strange about Giulia wanting to leave on a specific date, and I can't remember all the ins and outs, and I'm not going to try and speculate, because if I get it wrong, that would just be stupid.
But because none of that information is readily available in English.
Exactly.
Readily available, period. It's all hearsay. She said. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. But the whole thing with Prominence, and indeed with the rest of the Ice Ribbon roster, it takes on a whole, like, I was very much like, okay, it's going to be a cool title defense for Giulia. And then the more I researched it, because I did the research just before the Maya Yukihi match, and from what I understand and from what I've gleaned, there is very real still hatred between Maya Yukihi and Giulia. From what I understand, Suzu and Giulia are sort of okay now, but there is certainly residual heat between Maya Yukihi and Giulia, which may explain the result of the match. But it does take on a new sense of realism and adds another layer to the matches that we got in Giulia's extremely short run with the red belt, which we will be getting to, because let's face it, she's not going to WWE until she's had a proper run with that red belt. But Matt, obviously you sort of got into Stardom and you sort of missed, pardon me, all of this. Does it change your opinion of Giulia? Sort of, did you see any of this? Did you see her journey from sort of quiet crowds and closing shows and no reaction, which was certainly the way at the start, to sort of, again, now she's closing shows and, people are what's the word I'm looking for?
Enamored.
Thank you. Not enraptured, because that's not a word. Enamored with her. What do you think there?
I always say my favorite thing, especially with Stardom, is, and the people I root for, is who's going to push the company forward. I don't care who is the white belt champ, red belt champ, even though I do say let's strap up Hazuki sometime in 2024 Stardom.
Oh, come on. Come on, people.
Come on.
I mean, Matt, to be fair, I am going to cut you off there. If the injuries keep stacking up, mate, it's going to be her and Fukigen Death in an Iron Man match at the main event of All-Star Grand Queendom. So let's keep pushing.
Hey, I think Fukigen could go.
Absolutely.
Get ready for her World of Stardom Championship run.
But
give us the clown.
Giulia is again, she's somebody that obviously she draws tickets, she draws eyes. Again, it's especially over here in the States, which and I know we say it all the time on the show, and I know Karen will obviously back me up because we live in the same country and the same time zone, which is nice when we schedule these podcasts. Makes things just a little bit easier for me. Is that if that Stardom definitely needs to do some sort of U.S. tour, or a few shows or something, especially with Giulia getting the reaction that she did in Philly, getting I was there live for getting the reaction she did in Vegas, and then obviously Maya this past weekend, which we'll cover when we talk about the show tomorrow. But regardless, is that's, you want to have your golden goose carrying your main title. Now with Stardom, they pretty much have two main titles, or even three, because I guess you got the IWGP Championship, because you're doing as many defenses in Stardom than you are. Again, another story for another day, and it's Mayu that has it. We all love Mayu. But just kind of piggybacking off your guys' story about Giulia leaving Ice Ribbon and doing that whole thing with Suzu. And I only know a little bit going into 2022. I only knew a little bit about the story, but there's clip on YouTube, and I believe it might have been the official Stardom page that posted it, when they were building up to Suzu and Giulia at the beginning of this year for the World of Stardom Championship at the anniversary show. And I believe somebody translated where it's all in subtitles, and that's where I learned that like Suzu and Giulia were roommates and like best friends. And you got to keep
they had
in
all
mind,
the photographs and everything, didn't they? It was
keep
really good video package.
Yeah, excellently done. I was like, wow, I only knew a little bit about this, but this just expanded. And then now I'm starting to think of what happened when Prominence came in and the match. And now I understand why everything was so emotional at that final night of the 5-star. Like I understood it, but now I understood it better. And I appreciate both Giulia and Suzu to put on that banger of a match, considering all the emotion that's in there. And keep in mind, now this is 4 years ago. Suzu just turned 21. So when Giulia left, Suzu was 17 years old, rooming with Giulia, and found out on Twitter that she left the company. Couldn't leave her a note, couldn't say, hey, in confidence, she found out, again, per that video, again, some of it, it's pro wrestling. So we try to kayfabe the truth and kind of stretch the truth and, whatnot. But I was like, you're 17 years old and you're looking up to this. She was 16. In more words of Gorilla Monsoon. Excuse me. There's my Gorilla Monsoon for the show. Got to get it in.
Gotta get it.
So, and she's looking up to Giulia as a big sister. And again, Giulia is probably the biggest star in the company, give or take, at that time. Again, I don't know. I didn't really follow Ice Ribbon, but it's not too far before she's the biggest star, one of the biggest stars in Stardom. So it's like, what does that do for the mental psyche of a 16-year-old that you're rooming with, that you're looking up to this person, and that you're literally trying to finish high school so you can become a full-time wrestler, and you're trying to follow suit this person's going, and this is the person that you're rooming with and getting advice from, probably not just wrestling but life advice, and all of a sudden that they leave and with no notice and just like almost like in the middle of the night packing up the stuff and gone, and you find out on social media. So it's just like, and then when the Prominence thing happens and you go back and look at it, and just like, the old territory, you'd always hear Bill Watts and Jerry Jarrett would always say personal issues draw money. And they did it with the DDM versus Prominence stuff. And then did it with Suzu and Giulia last year at the 5-star. And again, the smart thing, Giulia's first title defense was against Suzu. Hey, the thing's hot, even to the point where we saw at the final of the 5-star, it was Suzu, Giulia's former best friend or regardless, and Micah, the person that she's probably closest with in DDM, in the final. And there's that one shot when Suzu does win the 5-star, where they go to Giulia and she's just trying to like kayfabe it. She's trying not to show her emotion, but she's just in tears because it's literally just like, this is a win-win for me. She was
sweating. Her eyes were sweating. She's not crying.
It like happens all the time, guys.
Like back in the day when you would see Sabu audibly calling spots and Joey Styles would go, Sabu's trying to bite that person's ear. That's what you're doing. But again, you look at it again, I'm very, you would hear things back in the 60s, 70s, and early part of the 80s that people wouldn't give their notice or wouldn't do business the proper way, and then leave. And it's just like, well, and obviously we live in a different world with the technology and when you're leaving a company, like you said, Karen, especially even a business, you need to give your notice, because then this way you don't burn a bridge. If something happens where I may go back to that company and it doesn't make your current company look foolish, not only that, but then your employer's like, he did the right thing. He did the right thing. I think there was an old William Regal story where WCW called him. I think it might have been even Bill Watts that called him and said, hey, do you want to come? We want you to come to WCW like next week. And he's like, well, I can't, because I can come next month, but I have all these dates in England and all these dates for New Japan I have to do. And then they called them back the next day and they're like, we definitely want you because you're honoring, we would have taken you regardless, but the fact that you're honoring your commitments on a handshake deal. And that's really just what people need to do, just not only just in pro wrestling, just in business. If I give you my word on something, my word is gold. And not everything needs to be in a contract. And I know it's 2023 and we have to write everything down. Everything needs to be signed, sealed, and delivered and notarized and everything. It's just, you hear those old stories from some of those old wrestlers and would say, like you'd always hear it, Vince Sr. Vince Sr. told you that you're going to come in for 3 shows and you're going to make $300 on each show. You may as well can take that money to the bank because that's what you're going to make. Where it's just, it's a long-winded answer, brother. That's how I go. But that would be the proper way to do business. But considering the fact Giulia's done business properly by bringing Suzu in, literally giving her a huge rub by giving her those 2 matches, and now she's winning the 5-star. So it's like you look back on it, it's like that's the person she probably hurt the most. But at the same time, now look who's at the top of the card. And I don't think she gets there without Giulia and that initial feud, and then those 2 matches at the end of the 5-star and at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, it
Karen
was
has her finger up. Looks like she wants to say something.
Oh, well, I apologize.
I was going to loop into the current discourse about Giulia and the potential of her showing up at the PC.
Already there, Karen. She's there now.
I mean, I just drive the 20 minutes across town and go say hi then. I would like to think that she learned her lesson about doing business properly after what happened with the Ice Ribbon to Stardom transition. So,
yeah,
even if she were to show up, it would, if anything, this would have to be with the Bushiroad blessing. They'd have to like make sure it doesn't conflict with anything, but it would probably be a tryout or a medical check, a preliminary medical check to make sure that she doesn't have anything that needs to get fixed before coming over. But it's like, you know, how they deleted Io's coming over for a year because they had concerns about her back or her neck or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I know a lot of people are excited about it. People are already fantasy booking it. People are ready. Giulia, given the litany of injuries that are in Stardom right now, and people are dropping like flies. Like Mayu apparently dislocated a pinky, and now she's off the pay-per-view next weekend. So it's one of those things where Giulia is too important right now to just drop everything and show up in WWE by Survivor Series. That's not going to happen. I'm sorry, fantasy bookers. I too am one of the many that love Giulia so much. I am Ashoka. I am a very big Giulia stan, but I also have tempered expectations. And knowing what a pickle Stardom is in right now, with so many key players being injured or finally coming back from injury, they can't afford to let go of her right now. And if her contract, as you know, good old Uncle Dave said, is good until March, she will be there until March.
At the very, very least.
Yeah, yes. We have
bare minimum. Bushiroad will not let go of her. She makes way too much money. She's way too popular. So it's one of those things where, it's one of those things where when they brought her in, they had a plan. They're not going to sacrifice the plan just so she can come here to Orlando and sit in NXT for a year or two while they figure out what to do with, you know, Kairi, Io, and Asuka on the main roster at the moment. So it's one of those things where it's like, do I want her to succeed? Yes. Do I want her to show up in WWE? Yes, but not now.
No.
She needs to have that match with Suzu at Grand Queendom.
Yep.
She needs to defend her NXT, her New Japan Strong Women's Championship in a New Japan ring.
She does against Mercedes Moné.
Just like Mike needs to defend her IWGP Women's Championship in a New Japan ring in Japan.
In a really good match. Well, not in Japan.
That's another. But that's one of the things where it's just like, please understand how important, like if you're new to Stardom or you're new to Giulia or you hear Giulia and you're all excited about, understand she's too crucial for them to let go without proper preparation. They need her right now. She has a faction. She's very important. She's not just gonna disappear.
When we talked about aura at the start of the episode, we talked about I talked about how there are maybe 4 people who have that certain aura. 3 of them are out injured at the moment. So, you know, we've talked about this ad nauseum on the free podcast. Mayu's now out. Utami, Saya, Starlight Kid is just coming back.
What's her name? Tam Nakanaka.
Oh, dare
what's her
you.
name?
Her name, the World of Stardom champion, the cause of whole reason.
She fluked away to the red belt. Yes.
Sorry, guys, that's just me taking a go at Matt, because we all know it's Tam time. It's Tam Road. We know.
Always Tam time.
But
We're also without Natsupoi. We're also without Saki Kashima. We're also now without Waka Tsukiyama as well. Like,
it's not like Kid's coming back, but she's been out for a couple of months.
I was just going to say, she was only out for a month. She wasn't, no disrespect to Starlight Kid. She's had a very middling year in, the grand scheme of things. She wasn't the one necessarily that we needed to come back ahead of Sumo Hall. You are looking for a Utami. You're looking for a Saya. You're looking for your red belt champion in Tam. But that's sort of by the by. Giulia is incredibly, pivotal to Stardom in general, certainly Stardom at the moment. Like Matt's going to say, we've got reason to believe that she's tied up to the end of the year, 2024. So I would be very surprised if we see Giulia imminently in a WWE ring. For her, if the opportunity's right, the timing's right, and more importantly for us as Stardom fans, if they've got the people to step up, like they did with Kairi and Io, sort of with Mayu, Momo, Arisa, they all stepped up. Stardom has got the strongest roster it's had in possibly ever. So, and we talked about this as well, Matt, if Giulia does go, you have got Utami waiting to step up. She's already a main eventer. Saya waiting to make that last jump. She was supposed to win the 5-star this year, if you're to believe the reports. You've got Azumi and Starlight Kid. You've got Hazuki. You've got Natsupoi, who's had a breakout tournament in the 5-star before her injury. So you've got people to replace her, but they've all got to be fit. And Giulia's got to be ready to go as well. And that's where I sort of want to go next. And I'm going to I was going to do this chronologically and we've done a debut, we've done the surroundings about that, but I want to talk about her red belt run, because her white belt run, for all intents and purposes, 220 days, that sort of cemented her, especially that final match against Tam at Budokan, the hair versus hair match, this big cathartic sort of explosion of emotions in her biggest rivalry in Stardom at the time, which of course, as we know, is Tam. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that feud as well. But as Giulia fans, as Karen said, we all love Giulia. Were you, and again, we are looking at this without the presence of hindsight. So, there might be a time in 6 months' time where we go, this was a genius bit of booking, Hatman. Well done. But at the moment, bearing in mind that Giulia had the injury in 2021, which took her out of the 5-star, which she was slated to win, maybe, if you're to believe that. She then had Syuri take the red belt, and she had to watch her friend have the red belt. She had to sort of redeem herself to then win the red belt at the end of 2022 in December in Sumo Hall, and then drop it to Tam at the Yokohama Arena 4 months later. Now, my question to you, after only 2 defenses as well, Suzu Suzuki, Mayu Yukihi, not defending it against any full-time Stardom talent, were you disappointed with that red belt run, with the result of Giulia's 2022? Now, I personally think that she is going to be one of those few people that holds the red belt twice. At the moment, we have 2, Mayu, Io. I mean, the 2 Grand Slam champions in Stardom. You don't get much more Stardom royalty than that. There are 2 people that I think are destined to join that club, one of which is Utami, one of which is Giulia. Now, do you think this first run plays into that second run, or do you think it was a trial, Stardom didn't like it, and wanted to flip-flop to someone like Tam? Karen, what was your opinion of this rather bizarre 100 days as red belt champion?
May I put my tinfoil hat on?
You can. Do you know what? I would love nothing more.
It's John Cena proof.
Can't see it. So after the long journey we had with Giulia from, we'll go over her other matches as we get back to it, but to this point, yes, I felt it was too short, and it felt almost inorganic to a sense. But I also think there might be a sense of urgency at the same time, because my tinfoil hat thing is Tam's been wrestling for quite some time. And the more she's on Twitter, the more she's talking about konkatsu, which is looking to get married. It could be that Tam's road could be turning into a retirement road at some point. And
Matt,
it might
calm
be,
down. It's okay. Just calm down.
We'll get through this. We'll get through this, buddy.
These are two things: Tam retirement and Tam marriage. So it's like.
So, remember, it's a tinfoil hat. So take it with like a rock of salt.
Yeah.
That it kind of felt like they were scrambling to put the belt on her. Because again, we don't know how long her status with the company is. We don't know how long her contract is. In Japan, you have to basically sign when you're contracted or you're an employee. You have to sign a renewal every year. It's an annual thing. So you might have a 5-year contract, but like every year on January 5th, you're going into the office and saying, "I would like to continue," and they're like, "Okay, we got you for another year, and we know that there's more, but just for now, the next year is fine," because they love their paperwork and they love stamping things. That's a rant for another time.
That's what you get with Karen Peterson on the show. The insights that you don't get anywhere else.
I love Japan, but here's why I hate Japan. Let me get my fax machine out. So it made me wonder why the sudden urgency to put the belt on Tam all of a sudden, because it didn't have that same 6-month rolling build like they did for the white belt. As much as I hated that stupid bikini fight while they were doing the bikiniing photo shoot, it fed into the feud. It got people talking on social media. I know I was very vocal about how much I hated it, but that's neither here nor there. Leading up to that hair versus hair match, this felt anticlimactic for both Giulia and for Tam, because I wanted Tam to win the belt, but I also kind of wanted her to win the 5-star to get to the belt. Like I just don't know why it felt like they were hot-shotting it from one really popular wrestler to another when neither was leaving. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But,
no, I know exactly.
But that also makes me wonder if the plans for the New Japan Strong Women's Championship via Bushi Road also fed into the decision to take the red belt off of her so they could put this new belt on her at some point. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, tinfoil hat. Like, it just I felt like there could have been a more natural flow to everything, but it just felt so rushed. Like she had these two, don't get me wrong, 3 defenses, all great matches, much better than Kyrie versus Tam at the Tokyo Dome, but that's neither here nor there. But it's one of those things where
don't get him started.
It's from my heart to your heart, Matt. We're in the same boat, bro. We're like this.
I threw a pen across my living room at 3 a.m.
He was so angry.
I forgot the rest of the show.
Like,
I gotta go back and watch Ospreay and Omega. I heard it was good. I was so mad a year later.
but that's the thing, is that it's like I didn't understand, and I still to a certain extent don't understand why it was such a flip flop. Like kind of like, the shell game where you're like swapping the cups around. That's what it felt like. You had like Giulia in one cup, you had Maya in another, you had Mercedes in another, and Will in another. And you're just like, and it's just like, what are we doing here? Why does none of this feel right? I'm sorry that I'm making you guys laugh. Again, I'm glad it's for your Patreon. I hope a lot of people watch just for my stupid explanations of things.
That's great.
Genuinely, this is supposed to be tethered to one tier. I might just put it on the Patreon for everyone because I'm loving this. I completely agree.
I want to make you guys as much money as possible. Go to patreon.com/Stardom.
She got the point down better than us, buddy. Like, we're still trying to figure out where we're going.
The thing is I have my El Desperado Rocky Romero mask over my left shoulder. So I'm trying to find where it matches in the frame.
So smart. She's so smart.
Not just a pretty face, guys. I have a brain too.
This is why she's the demo goddess. I've told you.
She's right about freedom, brother.
You're starting to cash your money, Marks. Love you.
It didn't feel organic, and I think because we'd had 2 reigns in the Shiori reign and the Utami reign where it had felt quite organic for them to have the belt, though.
And Mayu's
Mayu's reign. I suppose, though, you could say that Utami sort of came a little bit out of nowhere. I don't know many people who, going into Sendai Cinderella, people were like, Utami's taking this 100%. But, they did, and everyone was like, okay, let's see how this goes. To everyone who is a Stardom fan, wanted Tam to win the red belt, at some point. My thought, I promise I'll throw it to you in a minute, Matt. I know, because we're talking about Tam, and I know you're going to explode in a minute. But it's a booking decision that, again, we may look back on this in 6 months, 7 months, 8 months time and go, that was a fantastic decision. Great foresight. But for me, we've just talked about how Giulia came into the company in 2019 in the most contentious of circumstances, took longer than Stardom would have liked to get over with the crowd, worked damn hard as well. Let's point that out. She worked so hard to get over with the Japanese crowd, to get to the top of the mountain, to get to a point where, come Dream Queendom 2022, people wanted her to win the red belt. People wanted her to be on top, which is where Stardom wanted her, where Bushi Road wanted her. And then you take it off her after 4 months. Now, I understand your biggest show, Yokohama Arena, you want that big moment, that big cathartic moment. But this is, we'd seen Giulia versus Tam in the 5-star final. We hadn't seen it that long ago. And I remember Tam coming out at the end of the, I think it was the Triangle Derby finals, wasn't it? And she came out challenged. And I remember the discourse was very much, really? Tam again already? We love Giulia and Tam. They're a great partnership. They put on fantastic matches to the point where, Tam versus Giulia from 2022 was one of my matches of the year, probably top 3. But it did feel very much like an impromptu end. It felt very much like something had gone wrong. But I'm sure we'll find out. Matt, obviously, we're talking about Tam, and I've given you the time to calm down now that Karen has mentioned both that Tam will be retiring and marrying someone. The only way this could be worse.
It's not fact. It's not rumor. It's just tinfoil hat talk.
I feel like the only way this could be worse is if she announced that she's marrying Taiji. Now, Matt. It's all right. They're just a couple of besties. My favorite Twitter put down is Taichi on Twitter going, "Oh, don't we look like a couple in this photo?" And Tam directly underneath straight away going, "Yeah, we're a couple of besties." And it's like, oh my God, Tam.
Forever. She forever friend-zoned him, man.
Absolutely. Taichi is never getting out of that box.
I think she's still mad that New Japan has like a TV Asahi program called Shinnichi Champion. It's New Japan TV. It's on New Japan World, whatever. But one of the episodes, Taichi and the host, Tsumugi Mitani, they try to be a YouTube couple. And it was right around the time where Taichi was trying to do stuff with Tam as well, like on his channel. Yeah, so I'm wondering if there's a little residual, like, well, you just decided to pretend to be a YouTube couple with this girl. Wow. So you know what? Kick rocks, boy.
Go on, Tam. But Matt, your say-so on the red belt picture.
First, just to kind of piggyback off what Karen said about the bikini brawl, I cannot tell you how many of my matches I had to get set up via bikini brawl. That's why I wrestle in front of about 150 people. Anywho, that's never happened. I figure, hey, we're all comedy here. We're having a good time. Yeah,
Isn't that how your Necro Butcher match started?
Yeah, then they brought Samoa Joe in, and that's how that whole thing started, brother.
I was not ready. I was not ready.
Butcher had a bikini brawl in Emmaus, Pennsylvania. Anyway, so I remember when, obviously, we saw when we entered the 5-star last year that everyone pretty much pegged Giulia winning, and then she dropped those first 2 matches against Suzuki and Mariah on the same weekend. We're like, what's happening here? And then she rallies. And wins the 5-star in a fantastic final match. Even that final night, her whole entire 5-star was great. Momo, Mayu, Suzu, Tam, everything. And then she goes and has that match with Sherry, which everybody saw like, okay, this is where we're going to crown Giulia. It's the perfect time. Sherry had this 1-year reign that was great. This is the perfect time. I mean, you literally couldn't peak it any better. And again, it was my match of the year for last year. It's one of the greatest wrestling matches I've ever seen in my long tenure watching pro wrestling. I think I remember even telling you, Rob, we might have even said this either off air or on air. I said, Stardom right now is very big on breaking records. Zumi's going through this record-breaking high-speed run, well-deserved. Saya is in the midst of this record-breaking Wonder of Stardom championship, and I know me and you put the Arisa and the Momo run on such a huge pedestal where literally it's just like, not only is she beat it, no disrespect to those two because those are A+, but like she just blown it out of the water. I mean, just blown it out of the water. And I think that's what they're going to do with Giulia, because she's, no disrespect to Izumi and Saya, who were great champions, great what they've done for the high speed championship and the Wonder of Stardom championship. They've elevated a belt that was already elevated even higher. But Giulia is the big star. You know, when you talk about the three of them, and she's holding the biggest championship in the company. I even told you, I'm the biggest fan of Io Shirai. I was like, I think she's coming for that V14. I think that's what they're going to do with her. It's drawn money with Izumi and Saya. Why not do it with your lead horse in Giulia? She's coming for that V14. And I told you, I said in a year and change or 2 years, once she hits V12, V13, I said I might start sweating. But at the same time, I want what's best for Stardom, you know, my favorite company. And if that's what's going to draw more eyes and more money, then so be it. If anybody's going to be Io's lauded run, it's going to be Giulia and this Giulia. Because, I mean, it's, you know, full steam ahead. And she has the match with Suzu, and we're like, man, that's kind of, you know, you figured we want to see it, but V4, V5, V6. She has the match with Mayu Kugi, which was amazing, but then it goes to a double count out. We're like, okay, it's a loaded show. It's the finals of the Triangle Derby. We had this great match with Hazuki and Saya Kamatani. They'll run it back maybe sometime in the summer. They're just building towards it. And then, like you said, yeah, Tam comes out. And again, biggest Tam fan in the world. And I'm like, Tam hasn't won a singles match in 3 or 4 months. How's she getting a title shot? Like, and I kind of just didn't understand that. I'm like, okay, this is, you know, we're loading up this card. It's a super card. We're drawing a lot of the money off Mayu and Mercedes, but Rossi sticking to his guns is like, no, my final match is going to be my red belt match. What's the only match that may blow it out of the water, or you're going to have a lot of new eyes on Stardom because of Mayu and Mercedes? I'm going to put Tam and Giulia on last, and we know it's going to deliver. Not many people. Scott was one of them. Our buddy Scotty Wrestling, hello Scott, was one of them and said, the way this is building, I think that Tam's going to take the belt. And I was like, it's too soon, and it's Giulia. And it's Giulia literally to the point. And again, I do not have a favorite wrestler in Stardom, but gun to my head, it's Hazuki. Belt her up, Stardom. But I just want
Tam. Wait.
You don't have a favorite wrestler in Stardom?
Breaking news.
Who are you kidding?
I say this all the time on the podcast. I want whoever's best for the championship. Literally to the point when Tam wins, it took me about a good minute to like, I should be excited about this because I'm walking the Tam road and it's Tam time and this, that, and the other thing. And I was just like, because I didn't see it coming. I figured we were going to give Giulia this big run. And I thought at that point in time, that's what's best for the company, is for Giulia to be on this long run. So I was like, okay. And then you see Tam with the belt. It looks like Rob's writing something down over here.
Writing a timestamp or run that 1 hour mark.
Yeah, yeah.
This is good. He's gonna audio clip it. But
you carry on.
But anyway, we got it all thrown off over here. Carry on, wayward sons. Anywho, so it was like I was kind of taken back by it. I'm like, oh, okay, great. We're doing this with Tam. But like you said, Karen, it seems like Tam is getting a little bit towards the end of her career to go into something else. You know, they released the Meltear CD, from which I understand has something like 1 billion on Spotify, whether Rob wants to believe that or not.
Awesome.
No, I don't. I just say that just to pop Rob. Rob's over there. Wait, what does it say? Matt hates Tam confirmed. The biggest lie ever told.
The heartbreak of her possibly retiring and possibly getting married and possibly, running away with Taichi. It's all too much for me. She's like, I can't.
I mean, that's the thumbnail and the name of the episode.
Unbelievable.
Hate Sam.
I'm ganged up.
He has quote unquote no favorite. Hashtag no favorite.
Hashtag no
say this
favorite.
all the time. I do not have a favorite wrestler, and now in Stardom, just in wrestling. Like I go geared towards like Punk and Joe because those are my trainers and whatnot, and blah 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 blah. But I don't have a favorite. Again, if I had to pick one, it would be Hazuki, just because I want her to see her win one of the 2 belts, where all those other wrestlers have won before. But
just out of interest, Matt, I am just going to cut you off once more, my friend.
Good.
What was your reaction when Tam won the red belt? Tell the people at home.
I was stunned, and I didn't see it coming.
Yep. What was your reaction?
And then I was like, "Oh, okay, this is where we're going. This is where we're going with Tam."
Don't you dare tell people that you weren't deliriously happy.
And then I was, because I was shocked at first. Yeah,
there we go.
Shocked first. Like,
the shock wore off.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't, and I said this on the podcast. Actually, Karen was here when we did our review for All-Star Grand Queendom, where literally my feed was about 5 seconds slower than yours. And when Tam picked up, Giulia for the violent screwdriver, I was like, she just hit her with the Northern Lights bomb, the Twilight Dream, and she's gonna hit her second violent screwdriver. I was like, there's no way they're gonna do this. So she was just getting ready to drop her, and all of a sudden I see my phone dinging, Rob Goodwin, Rob Goodwin, Rob Goodwin, Rob Goodwin. So as he's covering her, I'm like, there's no way. I said, Rob would not text me 18 times in about a half a second if Tam didn't win.
I think they all just said,
I forget what it was. Yeah, so I was just like, oh my God. I was like, I can't believe they're going. Because I expected a full long run with Giulia. I figured the Tam match was just there. So Giulia gets another big win on the biggest show in Stardom history. And they see just what they have with their main event players. So I was like, okay, that's kind of where we're going. All right, that's fine. And then it seems like they've done well with Tam. From what I understand, ticket sales are up. And obviously the YouTube is over 1 million views. And they do well on the pay-per-view and merchandising. So in hindsight, it's a business, and they're doing well with Tam up on top. But it does seem like if Giulia does, again, from what I understand, she's going to be with Stardom until probably another 10 or 12 months. If she does re-sign with Stardom and does stay another 2 or 3 years, I think it's very easy for not only to be Giulia to be one of 3 people to win the World of Stardom Championship twice, but I would not be shocked if she's the first wrestler to win the 5-star twice, because I think Giulia is obviously going to entertain a lot of offers when that contract is up. And if she does stay with Stardom, Bushi Road better back the money truck up, and because she's worth every penny. So regardless of where Giulia goes, whether it's AEW, whether it's Impact, whether it's Stardom, wherever it goes, that her price tag is going to be high, and it's damn well deserved.
I feel like Bushiroad's going to need to try to find that Mercedes Moné money, especially now if WWE and possibly AEW, because we're going to talk about the 2 big promotions, are possibly going to make overtures to recruit her. I know people with the rumor that it could be a year, it could be March. I'm fairly certain people are already putting her at ringside at NXT TakeOver, whatever the NXT show WrestleMania weekend is. Calm down. Again, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
But I feel like
if she's there in the crowd when we are, I will lose my mind. I will just say that.
I feel like should another big departure from Stardom happen for someone to go to WWE, it'll be handled like it was with Kyrie and Io, where it is like Himeka too, a retirement road, all the dream matches you can squeeze into like a 2-3 month period.
Yeah,
a farewell show, a retirement show. There will be a proper send off. I don't see her working a show in like Las Vegas one weekend and showing up in Orlando the weekend after.
No, I don't.
You bump into her at the supermarket, Karen.
Doing here? Absolutely.
I'll invite her out for some gelato. I know. There's some good Korean barbecue here in town too.
I feel like, to a certain extent, Giulia got quite lucky in the fact that it worked for her. The fact that she was able to get to the top of Stardom after the way she left Ice Ribbon, it could have very easily backfired, and she'd have had to go back to Ice Ribbon with a tail between her legs. So I don't feel like there is much risk of Giulia doing that again, because Giulia's not stupid. She will understand that she effectively got away scot-free, really. Do you think, and again, this might be something completely unrelated, but it was something I thought about. Do you think that off the back of Mayu holding the red belt for 377 days, Utami, I think, was 408 days, and then we had a full calendar year, 365 for Syuri. Do you think it was a case of Stardom wanting to flip the script as well? Okay, we've just come off the back of 3 long reigns with that red belt, and of course, don't forget, we've just had that 400 and something day reign with the white belt with Saya Kamatani. Do you think having a shorter reign with the red belt was done to sort of subvert expectations somewhat, or do you think it's for the reasons that you've already said?
It's hard because it's one of those things where you want. I never like seeing a top championship hot potato. That's always one of my biggest pet peeves. If you've listened to me on posts, especially when it comes to my beloved New Japan, that's one of the biggest bones I have to pick, because I hate belts hopping from one person to another person. I like long, credible reigns. Did it need to be a year-long reign? No. Could she have held it until the finals of the 5-star or the end of the Cinderella tournament? Absolutely. Because it would have given her at least half a year with the belt, like even half a year with 6 defenses or 5 defenses, or like when they were doing World Climax, like 2 pay-per-views on the same weekend. Sure, why not? But it just felt like they yanked the rug out from under her to the same person that's been chasing her the entire time. Like, I liked her run with the white belt because it was so dominant, and when she lost to Tam, it was cathartic. It was satisfying. It was what the journey needed at that point. But then when it came to the red belt, it was like that's it. Like I it just felt like, I'm like, what are we doing here? Why are we derailing the momentum of one of your hottest talents? Like, that was my biggest frustration with it. Is like, why are we?
That's
doing
what I'm saying. I was shocked, Rob. You're like, you thought I was jumping up. Eventually, I did. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Eventually, literally to the point. If you remember, I remember, as much as you guys like
I
to tease me about my love for Tam. My wife she shakes her head even more. Literally to the point where, it was a Sunday, my wife was getting ready for church. She came downstairs, picked up our one cat, and literally as she was walking into the room, they were doing the whole celebration with the trophy and the belt, and I literally recorded, and she looked like she just ate the sourest lemon. She's like, really? They're going with Tam now? And I was like, I said it to Rob. I go, if you put this on social media, and I said, I'm going to die. Please don't share this with anybody.
I think it's quite ironic in a way, the fact that Giulia, the highest commodity, as you just said, Karen, currently has the 3rd shortest reign with the World of Stardom Championship. And I'd technically class it as the 2nd, because Maya's was ended with an injury. And I don't think hers would have been. So there's only Alpha Female who has a shorter World of Stardom Championship reign. And if you were to tell me at the start of 2023 that Giulia was going to be one of the shortest reigning red belt champions in history, I'd have laughed in your face. Matt, I was completely on board with you. I thought if there was going to be someone who challenged Io's defense record, or challenged Nanai's reign history, I think it's 608 days, I think the record stands at, it's going to be Giulia. We could see an Okada-style 700-day reign, and I genuinely don't think people would have complained. But that's not the way Stardom went, and obviously now we have a Giulia who is 1/3 of the Artist of Stardom champion. She's now the New Japan Open Strong Weights champion.
There's on top.
The women's division.
Don't make me pack a bag and fly to London, sir.
But before she was the red belt champion, I'm really glad you brought this up, Karen, the white belt. This white belt, as much as the Hannah match was the most important match in my eyes for Giulia's growth, that white belt reign, the 220, I think, days she held that belt, was the most important time in her Stardom career. And I say that because you look at the defenses at the start, and then you look at the way she has grown. And this is why I love that Starlight Kid match so much. The road to Valentine's Day Budokan, we are going to Budokan Valentine at Korakuen show, or whatever it's called. It's called something ridiculous. But that match just showcases Giulia at her imperious best, destroying a babyface Starlight Kid, wanting to embarrass Starlight Kid for daring to step to her, feeling untouchable. Now, if you take that Giulia and then you look at her 1st, 2nd, 3rd title defenses, the time limit draw with Shiori, which was a good match. It wasn't a great match. It was an okay match. Her match with Konami, it wasn't a great match. It was an okay match. The Himika match, there it showed to me, because Himika was still relatively green during that time, she wasn't quite ready to lead a match, in my eyes. However, you get to that Starlight Kid match in February of 2021, and suddenly not only is she leading the match, not only is she building the narrative, but she's thinking 3-4 steps ahead. She's destroying Starlight Kid because she wants to prove a point to Tam. And the whole story about Arisa and, you know, that whole feud with Tam, everything about this white belt reign really cemented Giulia's character. And that, for me, is when Giulia became the star that she is now, because of that white belt reign, because of the progress and the work she put in to defending that white belt, and because of the growth that she was willing to undertake during that white belt reign. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some duff matches during that. The Tora match, to start with, which I was not a fan of. Be hardcore or be comedy. Don't be both. But they were, you know, few and far between for the most part, especially towards the end as we got further and further into it. She became more imperious, more dominant, and leaned into it. She wasn't a heel. She was a tweener. She was just an imperious badass, which was great. And she was comfortable in her own skin. And at this point, because of the confidence in being a champion, it was coming over into her promos. That promo that she cut, and I can't remember where it was, but I'll always remember the way the crowd almost turned on a dime. And it was, she was talking about the reaction she had gotten and how basically how much the reaction had upset her and how people hated her. And she delivered this real promo. Suddenly it wasn't a Giulia starting the promo with, to all the people that love Giulia. It felt real. It felt for the first time like we were connecting with a person and not an idea. And from that moment, the crowd were like, okay, yeah, okay, we're into this now. And this was all stemming from the confidence this dominant white belt run gave her. And that's why I think it's such an important chapter in Giulia's career so far. And I think it's quite funny that we're talking about how the white belt was more important than the red belt run. What are your sort of thoughts on her white belt run, Karen, as a whole? Do you think it was a very good run? Do you hate it? But what are your thoughts on the Wonder of Stardom reign?
I mean, I prefer her Wonder of Stardom run to her World of Stardom run, just because it was a bit longer. And she also stepped in and filled the void that was unceremoniously left by Arisa Hoshiki having to retire.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great loss, because there are so, like, I know you guys mentioned earlier, there were so many like unspoken dream matches that we'll never get to see because for, you know, her own personal safety. So it was one of those things where there was this gaping hole all of a sudden, and I believe Giulia not only stepped into it, but also grew exponentially during it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
leading up to that hair versus hair match at the Budokan, where, you know, very, like, I can shave my head and look absolutely terrible. She shaved her head and became more powerful.
Honestly, that first Korakuen where she came in the army gear,
yes,
and just with the, oh my god,
I was like, hello, madam, and just tell me all your secrets. Like, I was like, I love Giulia even more now. Like, how does she do it? And I think that's the things that she has, to draw a New Japan comparison. She has that Naito charisma.
Yes.
She can, and, you know, he is like, you know, the ingovernable one, but he's also the one with the undeniable charisma.
Yeah.
That she can be a heel when she wants to, she can be a face when she wants to, she can like Hana, she can toe the line, she can jump rope the line, she can bounce off of it and do whatever you know what she wants to with it, because that's who she is.
Yeah.
And I feel like she really came into her own during that white belt run, where, you know, even like we were talking about the Starlight Kid match, where, you know, she's like, I think, was it during that run where she like sat on Starlight Kid's back and like pulled off her mask and pulled out a pair of scissors and just like almost took Starlight Kid's eye out by accident. So it was one of those things where it was like she showed so much range that she wasn't just like this, like, Ice Queen who moved in from Ice Ribbon to take over, she showed development. And it wasn't just like one. She showed different facets with different people, but she was always the same person. And I love that kind of consistency. And that was the thing where it's just like with that match with Tam, it was like one of those things. It's like I loved that match so much that I don't want to revisit it so frequently. Much like Utami versus Shuri. I love me some Utami versus Shuri. But it's like Christmas. I want it to only come around once a year.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to give it my like entire attention. I want to be able to be sucked into it. But it was just like to go back to the red belt. Like I loved their All-Star Dreams or their what is it? Hina Matsuri All-Star Dream Cinderella at the Nippon Budokan hair versus hair match. Leaps and bounds more than their World of Stardom match at All-Star Grand Queendom. The 5 stars like nestled right in between, but like, it just felt that one match at the Budokan had so many layers to it, and that they also understood that they're 2 of the people who are going to be carrying the company forward. That the company is trusting them to do this. So yeah, that's why I think I like it much more better.
I think we're going to talk before we move on to our 5 top matches from Giulia's career. And Matt, don't worry, I haven't forgotten you sitting there in the dark. Don't worry, I have not forgotten.
Yeah, daylight savings time is really crushing it. Well, I'm making your point. I'm going to turn the light on. Yeah, daylight savings time here in middle of nowhere, PA is really crushes. You do what you need to do and tag me back in, brother. I'll be right back.
That's fine.
He's going to cry about Tam.
That's exactly where he's going. I'm going to turn a light on. In terms of Tam and Giulia, like there are pairings that just work in Stardom. Mayu and Io are, is one of those pairings. An underrated pairing for me is Momo and Mayu. I think they just have one of those really good chemistries where they just bring something out of each other, something that no other wrestler can bring out of them. And Giulia and Tam do that with each other. And because of everything that was built around Tam's quest for the white belt to honor the name of Arisa, and then Giulia stepping up to take the white belt after what can only be described as the worst couple of months in Stardom's history with the pandemic, and then Arisa retiring, and then Hannah's death. Like, it just seemed to be one thing after another. And Giulia stepped into that void. And like you said, Karen, managed to deliver. And Tam saw that. And, everything came together in this nucleus of just visceral hate. And it was organic. It's that lightning in a bottle that you can only capture a couple of times. They captured it with Utami and Syuri after that first match. They captured it with Giulia and Tam heading into Budokan. And I think Tam is the one person that brings that side out of Giulia. And that's why it's got to be protected. And I completely agree with you, Karen. That is something that we protect. We don't keep going back to. Okay? We don't see them fight now until, at the earliest, the end of 2024. I don't want to see them fight again. I want it to build. I want it to be layered in hatred, visceral emotion, because as proved by the Budokan match, that is when they are at their best. There are very few storytellers as good in Stardom as Tam, who do emotional matches like Tam. Her 2 best matches for me are a match with Arisa at Shining Destiny and a match with Giulia at Budokan. Both layered stories, both emotion-driven. And the gauntlet match between Queen's Quest and Noella Tabor, that's not technically a match just around her. But when she's got a story, when she's got something to really sink her teeth into, Tam is fantastic. And that is where I wanted to be with Giulia. Matt, the white belt run for you, how did it improve Giulia? How did it change her from the person winning it in that tournament to the person losing it and getting a head shaved, yet still looking like an absolute badass?
Just to kind of give you an idea of how much faith Stardom has in Giulia, before All-Star Grand Queen, what was the biggest show in Stardom's history?
The Budokan show.
Yes. And what was the main event?
It was, I believe it was Giulia having a head shaved. Yes. It was Giulia,
which was for the white belt, which is their secondary belt. over and it was the red belt match between Utami and Saya was great. But
closet banger.
Obviously, the story was better with Tam and Giulia, but they put that one on last. And be one thing if they put it on last on like a random, pay-per-view that they do every 3-4 weeks. But on that one, it's like, no, we're going with this one because of the faith they have in the story, the faith they have in Tam, and most important, the faith they have in Giulia. And even Tam, again, we said about how it was kind of shoehorned in that we were getting Tam versus Giulia for the red belt at All-Star Grand Queendom. They did a great job building it up, with the shoot headbutt on the press conference where Tam is just all bloody, but even Tam cuts that fun. Yeah,
such a great visual that is. Sorry,
Tam cuts that great promo that she said after, and literally she almost elbowed Natsupoi. Natsupoi trying to calm her down backstage. Back elbow to Natsupoi. We love her, but like she's like, I beat you. I finally beat you. Not only did I beat you, but I beat you in the biggest show in Stardom history at that point. And I took the white belt and I shaved your head. And all everybody's talking about is Giulia, 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 and that's how you know how damn good you are when you get over on a loss. We always say, Rob, we always say it's going to be on my tombstone when I die. There's going to be a lot of things on my tombstone when I die. My thing's going to be about this big.
It's going to be massive.
It's
going to be huge. My wife has anything to say about it. She wants to save that money. She wants my comic book collection. Anywho, it's not who goes over, it's who gets over. And I bring this up constantly. One of the biggest stars in the history of wrestling is Stone Cold Steve Austin, and his best match, his most iconic match, was WrestleMania 13 Bret Hart. He lost that match.
People forget that.
Yeah, people forget about that. And again, this shows you how great Bret is as a performer. And same thing with Tam, what she's able to do with Giulia, but at the same time, it doesn't get that. Look at this. We have a fourth member of the podcast.
But I want to be on the Stardom cast too. It's not a podcast with Mom unless I show up.
We start talking about Tam and Giulia. So
there you go.
She also loves Giulia.
Who doesn't? See, Giulia's over with everybody. But so that just goes to show you again. I think everybody would have loved Giulia to go, and I'm assuming that's where they were going to go. Giulia was going to go over Arisa for the Wonder of Stardom Championship because that's what they were building towards. Even Giulia, when she won the Cinderella tournament, she did say, I'm challenging Arisa on this date. And I went back and watched it for a Patreon episode. I think we just released not that long ago, and I was like, oh damn. We were this close to getting that match. I'm assuming that's the direction they would have went. Obviously, they went to a tournament. Her and Tam in the finals of the tournament was great. They ran it back a month or so later. That was great as well. And then they can always go back to Giulia and Tam. But very much, I'm kind of in the same vein with you. As great as it is, let's cool it off and then build it back up. But I think the story into the Budokan match was the best. The story for as fast forward as they did it for All-Star Grand Queendom was right there below. But as far as match quality goes, that you just want bell to bell, great match, I think the best Giulia Tam match was the finals of the 5-star. And what's great about the finals of the 5-star is it's like you literally are just like, oh wait, this is hold on, and now I'm ready for it. Where it's just like with these Tam and Giulia matches, you're building towards it, and you're getting towards it. When we had that final, and in my opinion, it's the greatest match in the history of the 5-star Grand Prix. It's like, man, I got 10 minutes to kind of gear up to this. We're getting Tam and Giulia in the final. And they absolutely knocked it out of the park and delivered. But as far as the red belt run goes, it obviously was very short. But if you're going to stack the matches up, red belt versus white belt, again, it's subjective. You can like what you like, but I'd find it very hard pressed if you will see anybody that will not put that Sherry versus Giulia match where we crown Giulia as our red belt champion as number one with a bullet. So I think that I will agree saying the white belt run was maybe a little bit better just because of it was longer, but you can't deny the way that they crowned Giulia for the World Stardom Championship was just great.
I think that's what I find so disappointing about the red belt is because it was such a redemption arc that latter end of 2022, and it was crowned off in such an outstanding match that it seemed like such an anticlimax. Sorry. So I find that really. So I think that's why I like the Wonder of Stardom Championship reign more, because it showcased the growth of Giulia, because it was so pivotal to that run Whereas the World of Stardom title, the actual run itself was disappointing. The match where she gained it, for me, that should have been the start of something. That should have been like I am here. I am at the top now. My concern, and I've talked about how I think Giulia is going to be a 2-time champion. I fully believe that she will be. My only concern about her being a 2-time champion is, are they going to be able to build the momentum behind her that she had before this first run? Is it going to... I mean, I know that you can put the belt on her at any point. It's Giulia. But it felt right after that match with Suri. It felt like it was like I said, the start of something. Are they going to be able to build the momentum behind her, ready for that reign the second time, Matt?
It's very tough because the first time is like always the sweetest. It's very tough to, like, I always remember like what my all-time, I'm not saying it's the greatest match of all time, and I'll get back to where I'm getting to before we get ready to wrap this up. My all-time favorite match, just because it was of how it built out, with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, WrestleMania 12, because of Shawn coming so close to winning the belt and finally winning it. And then he's won it several times after that, but it was never as sweet as the first time.
Yeah.
You have Mayu, who's the most loved wrestler in the history of Stardom, maybe just the history of the universe in any sport, right? Because it's Mayu, where it's like when she won that red belt the first time, it was so cathartic because of her story with Io. They tried to recapture it at least a little bit with B. No disrespect to B. I think B's run is very underrated. I think she's a fantastic wrestler, but it's tough to recapture that on the second time. It's going to take some really good booking and get somebody really, really hot that has the World of Stardom Championship for her to drop it to. And maybe it's Tam at All-Star Grand Queendom too. Maybe you run that one back and that's where you crown Giulia and then you give her big long run. I don't know. There's obviously the injuries, and that's another story for another day. We'll be here forever, but there's so many different ways that they can go and no decision will be bad. If it's Tam, if it's Suzu, if it's like, let's do another Mayu run. Why not? If it's Utami, if it's Saya Kamatani, there's Micah, Hazuki. Again, I said it again. There's so many people at the top of that card they can strap up with the red belt that it would be fantastic. But again, I really think that if I was the booker of Stardom, I would be like, we need to put that belt back. We need to re-sign her. Let's not sign her, or let's not put the belt on her. And then 4 months down the road, she needs to go. She's leaving. Let's sign her. Let's get that Bushi Road money. Let's get that Mercedes money, and let's sign Giulia. Yeah, that's what they needed. That really needs to be a top priority for them in 2024. It's like, let's lock this down and let's lock it down now so we know who we're going with. That's what I think that they should do.
I mean, if you were the booker, Matt, let's not get this wrong. The first thing that they do is have an American show and then a UK show, and I respect you for that. In that order. just do a little tour. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Make the American show on the East Coast, please. I'm tired of all this West Coast nonsense.
Yeah. God, I agree.
Where they really should do it, and maybe I'm a little biased because it's this area, but I think where they would draw a ton of money and the crowd would be hot because of how rabid the fan base is, Hammerstein Ballroom, New York City. You get 4,000 people in there, and I think they would absolutely sell it out. And
I think they would. They
would. But were you at the New Japan show that they had at the Hammerstein Ballroom? Where it was delayed over an hour because there was a problem with the doctors or the ambulance or whatever that was supposed to be on there. It's a great venue. It's
New York City's tough. It's tough.
There's just a lot of hoops. I thought you were gonna say in Philadelphia at the 2600 Arena.
That'd be 1B. That would be 1B. But I just think because of just the visual, the ECW Arena is for someone who grew up 2 hours away from there and has been to a ton of ECW shows and just watching the ECW Arena, it's very near and dear to my heart. It's probably my either one or two of my favorite venues ever. But I just think just the sight of the Hammerstein Ballroom, and you can fit more people in there. I just think that would be probably my one, but my 1A would be the ECW.
Yeah, but because the Hammerstein reminds me of the Globe Theater where they had the Multiverse United shows. I do love a good maybe it's the New Jersey girl in me. I do love a good balcony at the theater. So I'm fancy like that. So
there we go. If you want to make Karen happy, just take her somewhere with a balcony, and you're all good.
and I have to be in the front row. Like I have to be like in the front row of the balcony so I can like put my drink down and also see what's going on.
There you go, guys. There you go. Right. To wrap this up, I was going to do a whole segment on the TAM view, but I think we've worked it in quite well to the whole white belt and red belt sort of discussion. Let's sort of have a look now at your top 5 Giulia matches. You know, you don't need to give a huge exposition as to why you've chosen those matches. Maybe you just really like those matches. But ladies first and guests first, obviously. Karen, if you were to rank your top 5, what would be number 5?
Oh, well, see.
Just going to quickly write mine down, so please stall for time.
Karen sent me hers like a couple days ago, so I know her top 5. Or did it change?
No, I just went by. I picked a match for the 5 years she's been there. So starting in 2019, I picked one match per year.
Oh, okay.
Nice. I like that.
So but 2 of them we've already talked about. We've already talked about the Hana versus Giulia match at Stardom year-end climax. We've talked about the hair versus hair match at All-Star Dream Cinderella. I'm gonna start with them with Himeka's Retirement Road. Last Maihime. Alikaba versus Maihime, which is Shuri and Giulia, and it's the only tag match I have on the list versus Himeka and Maika, because let me tell you, I was in my Donna Del Mundo fangirl feels all over this match between, Giulia and Shuri reuniting after, Shuri's gone off and started God's Eye. Maika trying to do her best and it kind of being stuck in that same level where Himeka was, where they're always the bridesmaid but never the bride. They're always fighting to the end of the tournament. They're always fighting to they're getting that championship match, but it's never enough. So for me, this the 4 of them as 4/5 of the original DDM having that match. Is it one of the best matches of all time? No, because wrestling is subjective. So for me, as a DDM fan, as one who's been watching Stardom regularly since Giulia's arrival, it's one of those things it was a very bittersweet match because Himeka knew that she had decided that she was retiring at a certain age and this was her choice. So it was one of the first big departures from Stardom that wasn't someone having to retire due to an injury. It wasn't someone getting whisked away to WWE. This was someone who said, I've done everything I can do. Let me fight all my friends before I leave. And it was it was a match where you could tell everyone had mixed emotions. Like they were happy for her, but they're also sad for her. But because, much like, in Japan, like they're a sisterhood. They travel together. They're always together. They outside of work, they also hang out together. So it's one of those things where it was not like they were having a breakup in real time in front of everyone, but it was very much Maika and Himeka lost their Goddess of Stardom championships to Alikaba, which I'm still very mad about because they deserved a longer run with that belt. But that is a story for another. That is another soapbox for another day. But for me, it's one of those. If you want to understand how far the 4 of them have come in Stardom since they're getting together as a unit, I would recommend that this be a match you must watch, even though Himeka is no longer with the company. And Shuri has her own faction now. So I feel like they tell a lot of the very short history of DDM in a single match.
Love it. I would honestly, it's and this is the beauty of this little segment because I would have thought of that match. And actually, the way you've described it, it's perfect. It's the perfect encapsulation of Giulia's career there. I love that. Matt, what is your number 5, good sir?
My number 5, despite Rob's BS sign that he put up a little bit ago, is the most important match in the history of pro wrestling. It's the match that as soon as the 3 count hit, that the air was cleaner, that our water tasted better. It is from All-Star Grand Queendom, Giulia versus Tam Nakano for the World of Stardom Championship.
Yeah, it's a great match. I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm just going to quickly shove in 2 honorable mentions that I couldn't fit into my top 5. And it's matches that we haven't spoken about. It's a time in her career, so I'm really glad that Karen brought up ALK. because it's a time in a career we haven't talked about that tag team, and actually it's a time when she got to showcase a different side of her character, and I love that crazy side, those dances, the costumes, something completely at odds with her singles persona, and I love that. And it's the tag matches between ALK and first with MK Sisters, Mayu and Starlight Kid. Really love that match to the point where I wanted MK Sisters to win the belts. And then they had a title match. I think it was only a month and a half later. ALK versus Mayu and Koguma. And that was also really, really, really good. So they're both from 2021. I do encourage you to go and check those two matches out. I think the MK Sisters one was from Golden Week 2021. Karen,
may I throw in my honorable mention before we get too much further?
Of course you can.
Mine was the singles match, Mayu versus Giulia, on the anniversary of Hana's passing, because it was at the same time as the first memorial show.
Yeah,
and it was outside of town, as in Yamanashi. Most of the roster could not go to the memorial show because they had this show commitment outside of town. Yeah. And Giulia and Mayu made sure that the match was not about either of them, but about Hana.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
It really, really was.
Trying not to cry right now, but yeah.
Please don't, because you'll set me off. I can't do this. So my number 5, and it's a match I've already sort of touched on, is the Starlight Kid match from the Valentine's Day show, or the Valentine's Day weekend anyway, of 2021. Perfect encapsulation of a face and heel dynamic, and really a showcase, as I said before, of the growth of Giulia throughout this white belt run. Again, it's on Stardom World, February 2021. It's a match that good that you forget the semi-main was Syuri versus Azumi, and that was also very, very good. So yeah, that's my number 5. Karen, your number 4, please.
My number 4 is from the 2020 Stardom New Year's show for Kagetsu's Retirement Road.
Yes.
Kagetsu versus Giulia. And it is a time limit draw.
Mm-hmm.
It was very much only a couple months after Giulia's arrival, but it was after Giulia arrived, and Kagetsu and Hazuki both announced that they were leaving. So it was one of those things. There was another very glaring hole that was going to be put in the Stardom roster at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who watched the match, you're like, well, you can tell that Kagetsu was having the time of his life at the time.
Yeah.
But it was the after-match promo that really got me, because the key piece of advice Kagetsu gives to Giulia is, if you don't neglect the effort, you will definitely make it to the top of Stardom. So even with less than 2 months of wrestling against Giulia, and Giulia being in the company, Kagetsu knew that she was destined for great things.
And we've talked a lot about dream matches, and sort of Arisa versus Giulia as a dream match. The fact that we had such a small Venn diagram of time where Giulia and Kagetsu were in the same company, and we only got one singles match, because Kagetsu, I know everyone is a huge fan of his, and I completely appreciate that, but I do feel like sometimes he is sort of overlooked in Stardom's wider history. His World of Stardom Championship run, I feel, is quite overlooked, because, it happened at the same time as Momo's white belt run, and everyone's like, oh my God, it was this fantastic run. But Kagetsu's red belt reign was also really, really good. So I'm glad you've brought that up. And it's another dream match that I wish we could have seen maybe one more time. Matt, your number 4, please.
Real quick, just talking about Kagetsu. In my opinion, Kagetsu is the greatest working heel in the history of Stardom. Not just
yes,
yes, the greatest.
Yes.
And yes, Tora's doing a great job, especially coming off this 5-star run, building herself up there. My number 4 is, again, it's a match that we talked about very much quite a bit in this fantastic episode that we're doing with you two fantastic fine folks. The end of 2019. The end of 2019. The match that, again, that in my opinion really put Giulia on the map was her match with Hana Kimura at the year-end Climax 2019. Again, like, when I look at wrestling, I look at, like, when I watch a match, especially a match that good, I'm like, okay, how did they put this together backstage? I mean, just looking at my own, history, being involved in pro wrestling as long as I have, and some matches, like you look at Young Bucks matches, and they're put together A to Z, which is fine. I don't care. That's a match that, like, okay, here's what we're doing. here's what we're doing. Okay, right? All right, I'll see you out there. And that's about it, where it's a lot of improv. And to me, that's where, and I could be wrong. I could, Giulia can come up to me and be like, no, we literally called everything A to Z on that. But that's a match that's like, yeah, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. It's going to a draw. Okay, see you out there. And they improv. And Hana is at the top of her game, one of the biggest stars in the company at that time. And again, if you remember back at year-end climax, that was a point in time where that was probably the biggest show of the year. And Hana does a great job giving Giulia a lot in that match to get her over to the next step where we would eventually see her be the star. So, yeah, my number 4 is Hana versus Giulia.
Again, that match had a red belt title match on it. It was Mayu versus Kagetsu. And yeah, I don't think people talk about that match. But
Arisa and Konami, I think.
It was Arisa and Konami, yeah.
That actually, Rob, you reminded me, that is for the end of the month for the Patreon. I'm actually reviewing that show. I might actually start watching that tonight. So
good shout. Yes. Why not? I agree. But Hana and Giulia is the match that people talk about from that show. And for good reason. I will just say that number 4 for me was also Hana Kimura versus Giulia from year-end climax for all the reasons I detailed earlier. I think, is it Giulia's best? No, or it'll be number 1 on the list, not number 4, because that's how lists work. But it is, as I said before, the most important for me in Giulia's development, in her early development, in her early Stardom career. So that's for me number 4. Into top 3s then. Karen, number 3.
Well, it was y'all's number 4. It was my number 3, which was 2019 Start of the Year in Climax, Giulia versus Hana Kimura. It was Hana fresh off her 5-star win. It was Giulia trying to get a foothold and establish her as a credible force to be reckoned with within the company. I did love that they openly discussed the fact that they are both of mixed heritage and basically said there's only room for one of us at the top, and it's not going to be you, it's going to be me. But then, Giulia turns around 2 months later and brings in Shuri, who's also half mixed heritage. So she just throws her whole entire argument out the window. But it spoke volumes because less than 2 weeks later, they're tagging together at Wrestle Kingdom in a dark match at the Tokyo Dome. If anybody from New Japan or Stardom are listening, you guys are cowards. Put this on both of your streaming services, including the ones from Wrestle Kingdom the following year, which are still not on either.
Absolutely.
If you can put AEW, Impact, GCW, and everywhere else in between, those matches can be found and put on there.
Yes.
Please and thank you most respectfully. Love Karen and the Stardom Cast.
Ladies and gentlemen, bow down to the Queen, Karen Peterson. There it is.
Tinfoil hat. Crown is on.
Queen's Quest there, folks. Phenomenal.
Incredible. And this is why we're doing the Giulia episode, because of Giulia-esque rants like that. Love it.
Bring it out of me. I don't know why.
Real dangerous Queen, Karen Peterson, folks.
Don't put me into a match, Matt.
Matt, number 3.
My number 3 is from Nagoya Supreme Fight, Giulia versus Mayu, where the winner would have gotten if you remember, this was supposed to be a 3-way with Tam. I think Tam got COVID or something, and this was going to be whoever won was going to get a title shot at one of the 2 nights of World Climax. You go to a 30-minute time limit draw. Giulia cuts a phenomenal promo afterwards where her chin is all busted open.
Yeah.
And she just looks at, and she's like, you made me bleed, this or that. He goes, here's what I propose. We went to a draw. The winner's supposed to get a title shot. Why don't you get a title shot on night 2? I'll get a title shot at night 1. And they look at Rossi and they're like, Rossi, is that okay? And Rossi looks up, stands up, and puts the thumb up. And then like Chuck Norris and dodgeball. And but you talked about how there's so many great rivalries and feud, Stardom. Obviously the 3 that everybody goes to is Io and Mayu, is Shuri versus Utami, Giulia and Tam. Then we talked about the underrated ones, Mayu and Momo's one. Mayu and Giulia is another one. You go back and watch all of their matches, and you're just like, you'll be watching the match, you'll be 2 minutes in, and like, oh goddamn, I forgot these 2 are really, really good together. Like they don't miss. Like their 5-star matches in 2020 and 2021 and 2022 are absolutely fantastic. I know Karen brought up the their one match on the anniversary of Hana's passing, but that is one, in my opinion, out of all the Mayu and Giulia matches, that one's my favorite. And I think just because it went 30 minutes, and when you have 2 great wrestlers that are given that allowed time, then you're giving them more time to tell out and flesh out their story. And the fact that but it seems like they always go to a drop, which is fine. Just goes to show you that Giulia is on the level of the icon and vice versa. So that is my number 3, good sir.
My number 3 is Hazuki from the G1. Oh my God.
Put Hazuki in the G1.
Oh, no. Oh, can you imagine?
Hazuki and Eddie Kingston, please.
Hazuki and Ishii. Hazuki and Shingo.
Don't tease me with a good time, gentlemen.
Real quick, I'm sorry, Rob, not to cut you off. So, Karen, one of our Patreon episodes we did what if we got to book a Forbidden Door show with Stardom, and my number 1 match was Hazuki versus Shibata. That was
when are we booking a historic crossover fantasy booking?
Get Karen in. That's what we're doing. Pencil her in. That's what we're doing. I
will save that for you guys.
I think we're opening. We have. I think our what if maybe December or January. We already got. Look at that. We're already plotting ahead. We're booking ahead,
guys. Production meeting. Love it.
In real time. This is how it really happens.
Yeah. We wing it a lot of the time, to be honest.
It works. It's working for us. I don't know.
Works, yeah. Yeah, Hazuki from the 5-Star Grand Prix, Night 1, 2022. If there was the distillation of these two wrestlers, this match is it. It is a wild brawl. We joke about it all the time on this podcast that Hazuki is no nights off. Hazuki literally doesn't matter if she's in the opening 4-way or if she's in the main event fighting for the red or white belt. She goes at 100 miles an hour and it is fantastic. It's why she is beloved by everybody who watches Stardom, and she just meets the perfect person in Giulia. They just hit each other and hit each other and hit each other. It's a furious, quick-paced, breathless match. Absolutely love it. And the fact that Hazuki won as well, a really big victory. And it was part of that enormous run of 7 matches, I think, that she went on back-to-back wins. And then, ultimately lost the next 5. But we don't talk about that. It was nice to think briefly that Hazuki was going to win the 5-star. But yes, it's an underrated match. And it's one of those again that showcases just how good Giulia has gotten in ring. Into our top 2 matches then. Karen, number 2.
This would be from October 1st, 2022. It is the 5-Star Grand Prix Blue Stars final.
Oh, okay.
And Suzuki.
Swerve. Look what you did there. Love it.
I would say, damn, didn't you?
Absolutely.
Largely because this was the long-awaited first singles match between Giulia and Suzu and Stardom. Personally, and like we've talked about this before, I preferred this match much more to Suzu going for the red belt from Giulia because of how emotionally cathartic it was. The build, it started in January when she showed up in the company, and it just kept going and going and going and going. And there was no, it very much felt like the, airing of the dirty laundry for the sake of, making money out of it. But also it felt like there was all the emotional closure they needed. They just left it out all in the ring. And at the end of it, Suzu looks at Giulia and says, I want one more. And of course, it was one more, but with this finger.
It was.
What is
like you do. And it was one of those things where, because this match was saved for the last day of the 5-star, and Suzu was out for the first half of the 5-star due to illness, I believe. But then she came in and then ran the second half of the table in her first 5-star. At that moment, I was like, they've got plans for her. And then, January shows up and she's going for the red belt. And I'm like, they obviously have plans for her. She wins the 5-star this year. And I'm like, she leaves prominence. I'm like, they have plans for her. Now we know that there are plans for her. And I feel like if they can build up into whether it's at the end of the year this year at All-Star Dream Queendom, or if they're going to hold off of it until All-Star Ramalama Ding Dong in April. I'll never get the names right. All-Star Dream, Grand Queendom? That's the one. Grand Queendom's in April.
That's how I remember.
I'm never going to get it right. I feel like they need to save that match for something very big, especially if it's going to be Giulia putting Suzu over, because that's much like Starlight Kid with Mayu and Saya Kamatani with Tam. That's the mountain. Giulia is Suzu's mountain, and now if Giulia is leaving the company at some point, the best way to put Suzu over and establish her would be to have that match.
Agreed. And you mentioned the emotion, Karen. Like the moment they look across the ring from each other, just burst into tears at the start,
and they're like,
then during the match, start crying again, and then at the end of the match, still crying. And honestly, that's what separates, because it's genuine emotion as well. It's not forced, it's not fake, it's genuine emotion, and that is what separates it from the Red Belt match, which is still a really good match, but it's the emotion of that 5-star match that really sets it apart. Matt, your number 2, please.
Rob, we talked about how they looked across from each other and were crying. That's gonna be me and Rob and Philly when we meet for the first time, and then I'm gonna suplex them.
And then I'm going to suplex him.
I wouldn't have it any other way, brother.
I agree with Karen on half of what she said. It is from the same date, but it's from the finals. And I do love that Suzu Suzuki match with her and Giulia, but the Tam versus Giulia match, which we talked about so much, just a phenomenal match between the two, even to the point where it's like they made it super special because they had that giant stage and they had the Blue Stars block winner and the Red Stars block winner, where it's separated and they came down. And it's literally, again, for non-Stardom fans and for friends of mine that just watched, American Wrestling, WWE, and AEW, which is fine. I'll tell them, just watch the entrances just from that, because Giulia and Tam, they look like the 2 biggest stars in wrestling. A lot of my friends are like, they're not $1 billion company like WWE or AEW, but yet they have cooler entrances. And Tam and Giulia have as much aura as the biggest stars on, WWE TV. And then you get to that match where it's just like, I mean, they're just suplexing each other. Tam's hitting tiger suplexes off the top rope, and then it just ends the most violent way possible with a just absolute brutal Northern Lights bomb from Giulia. But my all-time favorite 5-star match and my second favorite Giulia match.
Well, Matt, as per usual, it looks like you're looking at my notes. Tam from the 5-star
that he just wrote down, Karen. Keep in mind that he just wrote down.
Actually, it says Matt hates Tam confirmed. But...
I want to make notice that when Rob wrote that sign, that's when it got dark in my house because of all the lies. And
the sun was a little bit dimmer. Yes. The winds were a little bit colder.
The water was just a little bit more bitter.
Christmas blanket,
it was a salty day.
The 5-star final, for all the reasons Matt said. What I loved about it was the strongest foundation for Giulia to build that redemption arc on, because not only did she have to redeem herself from losing at Budokan, that ultimate embarrassment of losing, then having a head shaved on Stardom's biggest stage, but she then, having exercised these demons from her past, no offense, Matt, I know calling Tam a demon is a little bit.
I wasn't even going there. I don't know what you're trying to do with all these negative Tam thoughts in my head. I'm a very positive, loving person in general. I don't know what you're turning my lights getting dark over here. You're calling Tam a demon. I don't know what's going on over here.
But that redemption arc, then, having already closed that one chapter, having as well gone 3-2 up in their personal rivalry as well, and the fact that it's 17 minutes of breathless wrestling, and I feel like that was the only way you could have this match, was that them go full tilt at each other until one of them collapses, because that's the story of their feud. I've seen people who have criticized this match because of the no selling and stuff like that. But if you think about it, Giulia is on this ultimate quest for revenge. Like, she's not going to show Tam that her suplex has hurt, that the violent screwdriver has hurt. And I feel like there's, revenge is a powerful motivator. Redemption is a powerful motivator. It's going to make you do superhuman things.
Adrenaline and fighting spirit, Rob, is what I always say. It was like, you don't know how adrenaline and fighting spirit work. I'm like, have you ever been to a fight? And that's when the people tell you no. And I'm like, okay, then you don't get it.
No, I haven't. Right, fair enough.
Shoot that.
Now you have. But yes, I thoroughly enjoyed this match. Perhaps not quite as much as Syuri and Momo the year before, but this match was still an absolute banger. It could have been any of the Giulia Tam ones. The only reason I haven't talked about the Budokan one is because we've already talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast episode. So I wanted to insert one Tam and Giulia match in. I think just as a microcosm, just one singular match for me, this was it. Just furious, absolutely furious. Which brings us to now. I have a feeling, because all three of us have omitted one particular match, and unless one of us has gone really rogue, like really rogue,
Fuki and Death.
Fuki,
That's your go-to all the time, brother.
Always.
Yeah.
I've got a. Yes. Do you know what? Power to Koguma, the bear. I've got a feeling that I know what everyone's one match is. So unless I'm wrong, which again, I am usually, but I don't think I am here. I think we should just talk about this match.
Well, have Karen announce it. Go ahead. She's
Karen's going too, man.
You know what they say, Rob? A broken clock is correct 2 times a day. So
that's going to be on my tombstone as well. I say that all.
Long ass tombstone, sir.
It really is. You know, in the Barbie film where they're building that wall, but only building it up rather than across, that's your tombstone. Just building it up, brother.
That's not how it works.
No.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that it was potentially the hair versus hair match at All-Star Dream Cinderella on March 3rd, 2021 at the Nippon Budokan.
Ooh, that's not mine.
Oh, it's not mine either.
Oh.
I know. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, Rob, I will literally bet a small fortune. I know yours is. Our ones are the same, right? Dream Queendom last year.
Sure, yeah.
Sure, yeah. Okay.
So.
Okay, well, go ahead, Karen. Oh, this is awesome.
Please, yeah, absolutely.
So for me, this was the match that really sold me on regularly watching Stardom, like making time to go in weekly or multiple times a week to watch the show. And largely because of, I don't remember the last time. I think the last time I saw an actual hair versus hair match for a women's match was when Molly Holly got her head shaved, to make sure women could get on the card. So so yeah.
Mania 20
progress.
Right?
Yeah. So for me, as a long-time wrestling fan, I'm like, let's go, let's do this. So for me, it resonated because for me, it also, with the run that Giulia had with the belt, the rivalry she's had with Tam always chasing her. For me, this has always been, even though they've had better technical matches or more violent matches, on an emotional level, storytelling level, this one got me so hard, to the point where Tam's blubbering and crying, and Giulia's like trying to hand her the clip. She's like, bro, we had a promise, shave my head. And she's like, no, I don't want to do it.
We're running really late. Can you please just shave my damn head?
Yeah,
come on.
and the fact that while Giulia's like sitting there getting her head shaved, Tam looks over and it's like, that's unfair. How are you looking cooler now than you did before? Like, it's not fair. So for me, it was just like, this was really what really cemented both Giulia and Tam in my mind as people. Not I don't want to use the phrase pillars of the company, but people that the company could genuinely lean on to have consistently good matches. They're kind of like the Okada Naito of New Japan. You can go back to them, but you can only do it so often before it loses the magic. And for me, this match was magic. This was the one that sold me on Tam Nakano.
Sorry, Karen, not to cut you off. Are you okay, brother? Like, you almost had a mini heart attack there.
No, sorry. The door just opened. It absolutely terrified me because the door, for some strange reason, doesn't fit in the frame properly, so it swells. So if I've been in here a long time, and I am a sweaty boy, by the way, if it's warm, it tends to swell. So I think Kirsty's just tried to come in, and the door has just gone bang. So what I'll do is I'm going to disappear off the stream for a second. If you guys want to carry on, because Matt, I know what yours is, Karen. If you'd like to carry on about the hair versus hair match, I'm 2 minutes.
I'm done because we've talked about this match ad nauseum. But yes,
that is true. I'll be back in 2 seconds, Matt. Please, off you go.
So yeah, obviously, Rob, our number one is Sherry versus Giulia for the World of Stardom Championship at Dream Queen. If you just watch just this match as a whole, and you don't know the whole backstory, it's still amazing. For in a year last year in 2022 that had so many great matches, not just in Stardom but in pro wrestling in general. This was my favorite. Just Giulia, you take in the fact that Giulia was supposed to win the 5-star the year prior, and the fact that they went going with Shuri and catching lightning in a bottle with Shuri having the 5.5-star match with Utami. It was like, let's run it back at Dream Kingdom, and it worked. And that Giulia tried to get the championship off Shuri at World Climax Night 1, and then Shuri decides that, hey, not only am I going to beat you, but I'm leaving your faction that you created, you brought me into, and I'm creating my own faction. And they go out and have this absolute banger of a match. And I've said it on this podcast before, and I will say it again, and I will say it a zillion times. The fact that Sherry, who's all taped up in that match, is at the end of this brutal, fantastic, epic 1-year run with the World of Stardom Championship, is going out taking these bumps that she doesn't need to take. Like her taking that high angle suplex off the ramp into the third row, they could have done away with that, and it still would have been an absolute all-timer. But she made sure that she took that bump to get Giulia over more than she was already ready to get over. And the fact that they're literally throwing everything at each other, and that the fact that that Giulia can't put Shuri away, and we're getting towards the time, and now you've seen Giulia's head like, I need to win this match. I don't have the championship advantage. And then so she's hitting everything. She Northern Lights bomb, glorious driver, to the point where it's like, let me hit Micah's Ankatoshi. Let me hit Himika's concussion bomb. Let me hit the Tiger Lily from Hana Kimura. That's not doing, where she literally, with less than 10 seconds goes, hits a hammerlock Northern Lights bomb. Like something that she's never brought out before. Very much like in the Kenta Kobashi frame of like, I'm only doing the burning hammer when I absolutely need to do it. Is that you never seen Giulia do that, before or after. It's something that I would love to see her bring back maybe once a year on these big matches that she absolutely has to win. Probably my second or third favorite Stardom match of all time. Probably if you were to ask me, hey, Matt, take 2 hours, list your all-time favorite 50 greatest matches you've ever seen in pro wrestling, I think this one makes it. I mean, this was absolutely wrestling perfection in my opinion. So, yeah, that was my number one.
I can't really add anything to that, Matt, if I'm perfectly honest. Yeah, it was my number one as well. It was the perfect culmination of that story. It had to happen, and it happened in the most beautiful and perfect way. And the fact as well that they don't hate each other. It's not a rivalry based on, a betrayal or anything like that. It's a rivalry that has to happen. They both know it has to happen. Exactly. But it's a friendly rivalry. They know that whoever wins this, they're still going to be okay. It's something that needs to happen, not because of hatred, not because of, venom and horrible things like that. It was amazing. A really, really, really good match, worthy of main eventing Sumo Hall. I've just realized the time because it is late here in Ode, England. So I'm going to wrap this up. First of all, Karen, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute riot to do with you, to the point where I want to do more career retrospectives on different Stardom wrestlers. So maybe that's something we need to do more often. And yeah, hopefully you'll be down for that, because I've had a lot of fun doing this. But Karen, where can they find you? Plug yourself away.
If I want them to find me.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, if you want to follow my pro wrestling journey, head over to postwrestling.com. I previously did a lot of Stardom coverage, but now I have a monthly column called Dream Slam Monthly, which Stardom gets lumped into. But when a big show rolls around, I do get to do an event report. I also am the new co-host of Post Pro Res with WH Park. So it's a monthly program. So we try to do it the first Friday of every month. So the November edition will come out on December 1st. Dream Slam Monthly comes out on the last Saturday of the month. And what else? I also do all the New Japan podcasts for Post right now. Coming up, you may want to keep your eyes on Yield Pro Wrestling Illustrated, because I may have an article, a rare article talking about the Joshi wrestling scene and the impact around the world.
There you go. There you go. Definitely check those out. And not just because Karen is here, and I wouldn't say it behind her back, but fantastic writer, fantastic podcaster, wealth of knowledge. Definitely go and check it out. And as someone who listens to Post ProRes most of the time, I can say that her and WH are fantastic together. So go and check that out. For us, of course, you all know where you can find us. You can find us everywhere on social media at the Stardom Cast. If you want to follow me, and why would you? You can find me at Real Rob Goodwin. And yeah, thank you all for your incredible support. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Matt Turner, can you please sign us off, good sir?
Yes, before I do, Rob, you've been doing this podcast with me for 2 years, and you know many things about me. And one is I like to shill other people's things like I do with yours. So I may as well shill Karen's stuff. And speaking of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, folks, I just happened to pick up this bad boy earlier today. And if you go to, I just happen to have this earmarked. Oh, what are the possibilities? Page 19. The in print, one Karen Peterson's name. Somewhere there, this way. There
Hi, it's me. I'm on the committee.
She was one of the she was helped out with the PWI Women's 500. So if you agree on everything, give Karen the praise. If you don't agree with who's in there, she takes none of the blame because Karen is fantastic. And speaking of Karen being fantastic, Karen, I agree with Rob 1,000%. We absolutely love you on Post Wrestling. Now with my job, I am on the road constantly. Literally, my car is my office. And when I find out that you are on Post Wrestling, you are it's bumped up to my number one thing I listen to on my
gosh, thank you. That makes me so happy.
Literally to the point, I'm a huge fan of Howard Stern, the king of all media. So here's Howard Stern. When I find out Karen Peterson is, you go above the king of all media. So if you need to tell Post Wrestling you need that $200 million contract that Howard Stern got from SiriusXM, there is your plug, my friend. There is your plug.
Thank you, sir. Much obliged.
We absolutely love you. Me and Rob try to figure out on a daily basis. We don't understand the growth of this podcast. It's literally at a point where it's like, we know we work hard. We have fun. This podcast has blown up beyond our wildest dreams the last 5 or 6 months. And it's because we have fantastic people like you, not only on the show, but that support us. So thank you so much. You are a huge contributor to the success that Rob and I have, and we greatly appreciate you. Now, good sir, I'm going to wrap this baby up. You need to get a hold of me. Questions, comments, anything you'd like to see or hear, Matt Turner OF on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the TikTok is the best way to get a hold of me. You want to shoot me an email? That's fine. It's possible. The StardomCast22@gmail.com is the best way to get a hold of me via email. Folks, once again, we cannot say thank you so much. Greatly appreciate your support and your suggestions. Cannot do this show without you because, like I always say, it's just not my podcast. It's our podcast because we're all in this together. Everybody's different. Everybody's special.